I walked into the family estate with the usual tight knot in my chest. The hall smelled faintly of polished wood and lavender, a scent that always made me feel both out of place and unmed. Everyone was there, my parents, my sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, arranged in that invisible hierarchy I'd memorized long ago. Their smiles were polite, their eyes flickering with expectation. I could feel it immediately. I was, as always, on the outside of something that wasn't meant for me. The ceremony began with the formalities. My parents stood clear in their authority and announced the inheritance. $5 million would go to my sister, their long-favored daughter. "Work harder next time," my mother said to me, her voice casual, but sharp enough to sting. I swallowed, nodded, and let the words settle like dust around my shoulders. There were murmurs of congratulations, the kind that sounded rehearsed and heavy with obligation. I felt a familiar achy memories of birthdays overshadowed, of accomplishments quietly dismissed, of parental pride reserved exclusively for someone else. I remembered the small slights from my childhood, the books I had read that no one asked about, the trophies that went unremarked, the way my sister's every word seemed a higher note in a melody I could never reach. And yet I sat there quiet, observing. I had learned the power of silence. Grandpa, who had been seated in his usual chair at the far end of the room, watched the proceedings in that calm, deliberate way he always did. There was a slight tightening of his jaw, a subtle lift of his brow, and I understood instantly that he was weighing something. Time stretched. Faces blurred into a tableau of polite satisfaction and barely contained disappointment. My mother's smile tightened. My sister's eyes sparkled with triumph, but Grandpa remained still, unshaken. Then, without preamble, he stood. The room's chatter faltered. He lifted an envelope with a deliberate, almost ceremonial motion. "For you," he said, handing it to me. I took it, my fingers brushing against his, and felt the weight of expectation shift. Slowly, deliberately, I opened it. $55 million. The room froze. My mother's lips parted, a soundless exclamation trapped behind them. "You can't do this to me," she finally managed, voice sharp and incredulous. The careful, fast aid of control cracked. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The vindication was quiet, internal. No one needed to witness it. The proof was in the envelope in my hands. The unmistakable authority of Grandpa's decision. The room's hierarchy had tilted in a single deliberate motion, and the shift was undeniable. For a moment, everything was suspended. The polished floors, the murmuring relatives, the scent of lavender and dust. Then the room began to stir again, but differently this time. The air carried a tension I hadn't felt before. A subtle recalibration of who mattered and who had been quietly underestimated all along. I left the envelope on the table for a few seconds longer than necessary, letting the silence linger. My sister's smile faltered. My mother's fury simmered beneath her carefully composed mask, and Grandpa simply sat back serene later alone in the library. I thought about what had happened. The money was more than a windfall. It was a statement, but not a triumphant one. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to claim victory aloud. What mattered was recognition finally, quietly, irrevocably. And yet, I couldn't ignore the lingering questions. The family would never be quite the same. Relationships I had relied on for a sense of place had shifted, subtly, but permanently. The favoritism that had haunted me for decades was acknowledged in its absence, leaving a strange mixture of relief and unease. I sat back in the high-backed chair, letting the light from the window fall across the ledger of my quiet vindication. No one could erase the years of oversight, the invisible hierarchy. But Grandpa's intervention had created a space where I could exist without compromise. My worth, long minimized, had finally been measured in a way that could not be disputed. And in that silence, I realized something else. The power I had been denied for so long was now in my hands, but it carried responsibility. There would be no theatrical revenge, no cruel punishment. The authority I had been given was a tool, not a weapon, and the balance had to be maintained with care. The family would adjust. They always did. But I had finally found a place within it that was real, undeniable, and calm. The quiet vindication was mine, and I carried it forward without a word, without celebration, just as I had always learned to do.